What if the future king stood in the center of a palace built on centuries of tradition and whispered the 7 words no monarch in waiting is ever supposed to say? What if the heir to the throne, the man raised from birth to represent stability, continuity, and the unbreakable lineage of the crown, suddenly decided to walk away forever? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And what if the first witnesses to this moment weren't the senior royals, but the staff? Imagine this: quiet hallways, tightly polished floors reflecting morning light, and royal staff going about their duties. Uniforms crisp, faces expressionless, routines rehearsed to perfection. And then, suddenly, everything stops. Everything freezes. Because Prince William, the man they've seen grow from a shy little boy into the calm center of a turbulent monarchy, walks through the corridor with an expression no one can decode. Not anger, not fear, not exhaustion. Something else. Something heavier. Something final. How could anyone see that face and not break down? You know that feeling. The second your stomach drops because someone you look up to suddenly looks done? Finished? Like they've battled too long and too hard. And today is the day they simply can't pretend anymore? That's what witnesses described. But why? What happened behind those walls? And why now? This isn't just another royal family disagreement. This isn't a headline made for morning talk shows or gossip pages. This is seismic. Because if there is one royal who was never supposed to walk away, never supposed to lose faith, never supposed to put himself before the monarchy, it's William. The monarchy is built on him. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, literally. He is the central pillar of the crown's future. So when he walked into the palace that morning, shoulders tense, eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night, and told his staff what he told them, the entire institution trembled. Let me ask you directly. What would make a prince turn his back on the destiny carved for him since birth? What could break someone raised to be unbreakable? Duty should have held him. Tradition should have anchored him. Pressure should have molded him into iron. But none of those things mattered that day. Not when he said what he said. Not when he made the decision that left King Charles in tears. And certainly not when Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, heard the news and quietly broke down in a way that terrified those closest to her. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part? The staff saw it first. People who had spent decades watching royal storms come and go. People who had learned long ago to stay silent, stay neutral, stay invisible. People who rarely let emotion crack through their professional armor. They cried openly that morning. Some tried to hide it. Some couldn't. Some stood frozen, hands trembling. Others looked at William the way you look at a friend you know is about to make a choice they cannot take back. So what did he say? What were the words that shattered so many? We'll get there. But first, you need to understand something crucial. Moments like this, moments of rupture, moments of collapse, moments that change the course of a monarchy, do not begin with a single sentence. They begin quietly, slowly, silently. 1,000 tiny fractures long before the earthquake. And William's earthquake has been building for years. You've seen the hints in public, the tension behind the polite smiles, the unspoken conflicts, the relentless expectations, the grief that never went away. The weight of 2 families, his childhood family and the one he built himself, pulling him in opposite directions. But behind closed doors, those hints grew sharper, more intense, more personal. Think about it. How long can someone carry the trauma of losing a mother in front of the whole world? How long can someone watch his family pull itself apart? How long can someone stand between a father losing authority, a brother losing control, a wife losing peace of mind, and an institution losing relevance? There comes a breaking point, and William reached his. And that morning, the palace became the stage for the moment that royal insiders had quietly feared, and some had predicted, for months. Why now? Why this day? Because something happened the night before. A confrontation. A revelation. A moment that forced William to confront a truth he had been avoiding for far too long. You'll hear what it was soon enough. But let's stay in that morning for a moment. The staff didn't even know he was coming. He wasn't scheduled to be there. And when William shows up unexpectedly, people notice. His steps echoed down the corridor with a rhythm that felt wrong. Too fast. Too decisive. Too charged. He had something in his hand. A folder. Plain. Unmarked. One aide said it looked like it contained his entire life. Another said it looked like the end of something. William didn't speak at first. He just stood there, breathing heavily through the kind of emotion he spent his whole life hiding from public view. And then he said it. One short sentence. 7 words. Words that, according to one staff member, were spoken with perfect clarity, perfect firmness, and perfect finality. But before he said them, something else happened. Something small but devastating. One of the senior housekeepers, someone who has served 3 generations, covered her mouth and whispered, "Oh God, it's happening." That's how serious this was. That's how clearly everyone understood the magnitude of what they were witnessing. No one spoke. No one moved. Because when William finally opened his mouth, he wasn't speaking as the Duke of Cambridge, or the Prince of Wales, or the future King of England. He was speaking as a man who had reached his limit, a man exhausted by duty, a man suffocated by expectations, a man torn between what the world demanded of him and what his heart could no longer endure. And here's the twist most people miss. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a rebellion. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crisis of identity. This was clarity. Painful clarity. But clarity. Because William had already made up his mind before he walked into that palace. He had already accepted the consequences. He had already imagined the fallout. He had already accepted the heartbreak it would cause his father, his wife, his children, and the entire institution that raised him. But he did it anyway. Because sometimes duty becomes a prison. Sometimes legacy becomes a burden. Sometimes the crown weighs more than any human can bear. And William, for the first time in his life, chose himself. And that is precisely why royal staff cried. Not because a prince was being dramatic, not because William was running away, but because they saw something deeply human, something raw, something fragile, in a man who had spent decades suppressing every human impulse he had. They saw him try to stay strong. They saw him try to breathe through it. They saw him try to maintain princely composure. And then they saw him fail. Let me ask you this. Have you ever witnessed someone you admire hit their breaking point? Someone who always seemed steady, responsible, grounded, and suddenly, right in front of you, they unraveled just enough for you to see the strain they've been carrying? That's what this moment was. And here's where the contradictions begin. For years, William was framed as the stable one, the responsible one, the future king who would fix what his father couldn't and rebuild what his brother abandoned. But he wasn't unbreakable. He was simply undetected. Hidden pain is still pain. Private pressure is still pressure. And when it erupts, even quietly, it shakes everyone around it. Staff whispered afterward that they had never seen William like this. Not after losing Diana. Not after the family scandals. Not even during the most tense moments between him and Harry. This was something else entirely. This was final. And when word made its way to King Charles, that is when the real emotional collapse began. But that's not the part we're focusing on yet. Because there is one more detail, one more image, that defines the emotional landscape of this introduction. Just moments before William said the sentence that would send shockwaves through the monarchy, Kate Middleton was in a different wing of the palace, unaware of what was unfolding. Calm, focused, going through her schedule, completely oblivious to the storm about to hit her family. And when she found out, when the message reached her, it nearly brought her to her knees. We'll get to that. We'll get to the exact moment Kate realized what William had decided. We'll get to the confrontation that followed. We'll get to the tears, the heartbreak, the moment that made even King Charles lose composure. But not yet, because right now, we are standing in the silent corridor with the staff. We are standing beside the man at the center of a royal earthquake. We are watching Prince William inhale slowly, gripping the folder in his hand, and preparing to speak the words that would change royal history. And just as he opens his mouth, just as he prepares to seal his fate, the palace clock chimes in the distance. A hauntingly symbolic sound. A reminder of time. A reminder of legacy. A reminder of everything he is about to walk away from. He hears it. He blinks slowly. And then, he says it. But what he said, the exact 7 words. The words that made staff collapse into tears. Those are coming in the next section. Because what came next would change everything. And no one, absolutely no one, saw it coming. What if the moment that shatters a centuries-old monarchy doesn't arrive with thunder, alarms, or royal announcements, but with the sound of a single pair of footsteps echoing through an otherwise silent palace? That's how it began. Not with crisis meetings. Not with flashing lights outside Buckingham Palace. Not with a leak or a scandal or a headline. Just footsteps. Heavy, unmistakable, and wrong. Have you ever heard someone walk into a room and known instantly, without any explanation, that something is off? Something is broken? Something is about to change forever? That's what the staff felt. Not thought. Felt. Deep in the stomach. Deep in the chest. Deep in the kind of instinct you develop only after years, sometimes decades, of serving a royal household built on silence, discretion, and emotional self-control. Even at 6:12 a.m., a time when the palace is typically a controlled, predictable world of routines and rotations, people felt it. A security officer stationed near the East Corridor said later that he sensed William before he saw him. Not by sound, not by sight, by tension, like the air changed. And when Prince William finally stepped into view, carrying that plain, unmarked folder and wearing the kind of expression that even seasoned palace veterans had never seen on him before, the officer froze. Because the future king didn't look like a prince that morning. He looked like a man walking toward a decision he knew he couldn't undo. A man who had already crossed a line internally and was now catching up to himself outwardly. A man who wasn't supposed to break, but had. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had a morning where everything in your life looked the same, but felt different? Where something inside you was so heavy, so final, that even the air around you reacted? That was William. He wasn't walking fast. He wasn't storming. He wasn't slamming doors or pacing or breathing through rage. He was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right after a night of wrestling with the same thought over and over again, until the thought becomes a decision and the decision becomes reality and reality becomes unbearable. Royal insiders would later describe the atmosphere as funeral-like. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Their word, a funeral. Because something truly felt like it was dying. Was it William's loyalty? His patience? His faith in the institution? Or something even deeper? We'll get there. But let's linger in that corridor for a moment, because that's where the unraveling truly began. A housemaid polishing a brass railing stiffened and stepped back, unsure whether to curtsy or simply stay still. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it, but the tremor was obvious. She had watched William grow up, had seen him at the palace as a teenager, as a newly married man, as a father of 3. But she had never seen him look like this. She whispered to a footman beside her. That's not his usual walk. The footman didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone knew. Everyone felt it. And then it happened. The moment that confirmed their deepest fear. William stopped. Not in the usual way. Not with the polite nod or the soft greeting he often gave staff. Not with the composed, contained energy he carried as Prince of Wales. He stopped like a man who had lost his center of gravity, one hand loosely gripping the folder, the other hand curled into a subtle fist. His breathing heavy, not from rushing, but from holding back something fragile, overwhelming, and close to breaking. That's when the first staff member cried. A senior butler, someone known for absolute composure, tightened his jaw, blinked rapidly, and turned away for a moment. People later said he wasn't crying because he knew what William was about to say. He was crying because William looked like he was carrying 25 years of grief, pressure, responsibility, and emotional exhaustion in a single moment, and losing. It was empathy, human empathy, because no matter how polished the palace is, no matter how stern the protocols are, no matter how rigid the tradition feels, pain breaks through. And William was in pain. You may wonder, why didn't staff say anything? Why didn't someone step forward? Why didn't one of the senior aides ask him what was wrong? Because this is the royal household. And the rule, the unspoken rule deeper than any written protocol, is simple. You do not intervene when a royal is silently falling apart. You simply witness. You absorb it. You say nothing. But witnessing hurts too. And when William lifted his head, looked directly at the cluster of staff who had stopped everything to watch him, and opened his mouth, something inside the group cracked. Every instinct said, this is it. This is the moment. This is the thing they all feared coming to pass. But before he spoke, before he delivered the sentence that would send shockwaves across 3 palaces, there was a detail most people missed. His eyes. Red. Exhausted. Glassy. As though he hadn't slept. As though he had cried. You see, William is known for maintaining emotional distance in public. Not coldness, just controlled calm. He knows the cameras. He knows the expectations. He knows that any wobble will be dissected, speculated upon, or used as ammunition. But that morning, he didn't have the strength to hide it. His guard was cracked, his armor dented, his face honest in a way that made it even more heartbreaking. Now here's where the contradictions start coming in. Contradictions that make this moment even more dramatic, even more confusing, even more tangled. William didn't look angry at the monarchy. He didn't look resentful. He didn't look rebellious. He looked sorrowful. That's the twist no one sees coming. This wasn't the face of a man trying to escape duty. This was the face of a man who loved duty too much and couldn't reconcile that love with what it was costing him. Duty was killing him slowly. Loyalty was crushing him gradually. Responsibility was aging him prematurely. And for the first time, the staff saw all of this without barriers. William took a breath. A long one. The kind that shakes slightly at the end. The kind that tells you everything inside a person is breaking quietly. And then, this has to end today. 7 words. Softly spoken. Perfectly clear. No hesitation. This has to end today. The hallway fell into absolute silence. A young private secretary instinctively stepped forward, then froze, as if crossing that extra inch of space would violate some invisible emotional boundary. Someone dropped a stack of files. No one picked them up. No one moved. Because the meaning of those 7 words wasn't confusing. It wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't poetic or philosophical. It was devastating. This has to end today. And what? And who? And which part of his life? All possibilities were terrifying. And here's the part that made everything worse. William wasn't crying, but he looked like he was trying not to. His jaw was tight, his shoulders stiff, his voice steady, but only barely. And then, before anyone could gather the courage to speak, William walked past them and continued down the corridor toward his private office. A small group of staff followed at a careful distance, not to intrude, not to interfere, but because they knew something unprecedented was unfolding. Something monumental, something historic. He placed the folder on his desk, neatly, deliberately, like a man placing the final piece of something he had been building quietly, secretly, painfully. Then he removed his wedding ring for a moment, not to take it off forever, but to ground himself, massaging the base of his finger, the way people do when they're trying to stay calm through something overwhelming. A symbolic gesture, a heartbreaking gesture, a clue he didn't realize anyone saw. And he whispered, not loudly, not dramatically, but audibly enough for the closest aide to hear. I can't do this anymore. Now let me ask you, when someone you care about whispers those words, those exact words, what do? Do you stop them? Do you hug them? Do you tell them to breathe, to reconsider, to wait? The aide didn't do any of those things. Because again, this is the royal household. Emotion is witnessed, not touched. Pain is seen, not soothed. Distress is acknowledged silently, not verbally. And that silence is what made the moment even more brutal. William sat, leaned forward, put his head in his hands, and for 5 long seconds, he stayed like that. No one dared speak. No one dared offer water. No one dared say, "Are you okay?" Because everyone already knew the answer. And then, just as he lifted his head, inhaled deeply, and prepared to say something else, something happened that no one expected. A sound, a small, soft sound, a choked sob from someone in the hallway. A staff member who could not, under any circumstance, remain stoic in the presence of what felt like a prince surrendering to something enormous, painful, and irreversible. William heard it. He turned. He saw who it was. And instead of offering comfort, he looked even more heartbroken. Contradiction after contradiction. Pain layered on top of pain. A man who needed comfort but could not give any. A prince who wanted to be human but was trapped in the very role that wouldn't allow him to be. He stood. He adjusted his jacket. And he said, "Call my father." For words that changed the atmosphere instantly. Because calling the king at this hour, under these circumstances, can only mean one thing. A crisis. Not a public one. Not yet. A private collapse. A seismic family rupture. A life-altering decision that could not wait another hour. A decision William was about to deliver himself. And as the aide hurried out, as the corridor filled with an eerie silence, as William gripped the edge of his desk like a man bracing for impact, he whispered something again. This time even softer, even more devastating. She's going to hate me for this. She, of course, Kate. And that is when the staff realized. This wasn't just about the crown. This wasn't just about duty. This was about his marriage, his family, his identity, and the decision he made. The decision he walked in with was about to burn through all three at once. But the real shock, the true emotional rupture, the part that confirmed this wasn't just a moment, but a turning point, that came next. Because just as William prepared to make the call that would shatter King Charles, Kate Middleton walked into the palace. And she had no idea what she was about to walk into. What happened next changed everything, and no one in that building saw it coming. What if the moment a king's heart finally breaks isn't during a national crisis, but during a quiet morning phone call from his own son? Because that's exactly how it happened. No advisors present, no ceremonial guard, no royal script, just a father, a son, and a decision that would fracture everything between them. Let's pick up exactly where we left off. William stood in his office, gripping the edge of his desk like a man bracing against an emotional earthquake, while staff hovered nearby, terrified to breathe too loudly. The aide he had sent off moments earlier returned far too fast, far too tense, carrying something William had not expected yet. A sealed message from King Charles, sent not by text, not by call, not by aide-de-camp protocol. A physical message, hand-delivered, rushed, urgent. And when the envelope was placed in front of William, white, unmarked, folded sharply, the room inhaled collectively, because this was not normal, not protocol, not a coincidence, not a routine morning exchange. Charles had beaten him to it. Or worse, Charles already knew. Now pause here and ask yourself this. Have you ever tried to gather the courage to tell someone something incredibly painful, only to discover they somehow already sensed it before you even spoke? That was the energy in that room. William looked at the envelope like it was radioactive, like touching it would make the decision he came to announce real, irreversible, catastrophic. He didn't open it right away. He stared at it. He hesitated. He swallowed hard. And that hesitation, only a few seconds long, told the staff everything they needed to know. This message wasn't going to soften anything. It was going to detonate something. Finally, William slid a thumb under the seal and opened it with slow, shaky precision. The moment he unfolded the paper, the muscles in his jaw tightened. His shoulders rose. His breathing changed. Because whatever Charles had written wasn't neutral, wasn't gentle, wasn't cautious. It was raw. You know those moments when someone you love says one line, just one, and it hits you so hard it's like your entire emotional balance tilts? That's what happened to William. The letter was short. King Charles didn't waste words. He didn't hide behind royal phrasing or diplomatic cushioning. He wrote like a father, a worried father, a frightened father, a father who sensed that his relationship with his eldest son, his heir, was about to cross a boundary it might never come back from. The first line, William, I know what you're going to do. Imagine reading that before you've even spoken a word. Imagine the emotional punch. Imagine the panic that chases your heartbeat. William blinked twice, slowly, as though absorbing the blow. He read the second line. Please, I am begging you, don't make this mistake. He inhaled sharply. A tiny sound escaped him. Not a cry, not a gasp. A sound like someone trying to hold in years, decades, of unspoken tension. He continued reading. You are the future of the monarchy. Without you, the institution will collapse. Without you, I will collapse. And that was the moment, right then, that staff members later described as the second the Prince of Wales broke. He didn't cry, not outwardly, not visibly, but something inside him tilted. You could see it. Now here's the contradiction that twists the knife. William wasn't moved by the words about the monarchy collapsing. He wasn't shaken by the institutional consequences. He wasn't shaken by the throne, the country, or the legacy. He was shaken by one thing only. Without you, I will collapse. It wasn't the king speaking anymore. It was Charles, his father, and their relationship, complicated, strained, layered, misunderstood, has always been the emotional battlefield that William never learned to navigate. The next part of the letter was even worse. Don't carry the pain I carried. Don't run the way I ran. Don't give your children the distance I gave you. That line, that was the arrow straight to William's chest. Because Charles was finally admitting something he had never articulated in full. He knew he hadn't been the father William needed. He knew his emotional distance had hurt his son. He knew his failures had shaped William's childhood. And now, finally, at the worst possible moment, he was trying to stop history from repeating. But the tragedy? It was already too late. And just when you think the message couldn't get heavier, it did. Please, let me see you before you make your decision final. The word final hung in the air like smoke. William folded the letter carefully, almost reverently, like it contained a piece of his own heart he wasn't sure how to deal with. Then he placed it on the table. Slow, measured, controlled, and he whispered something the staff would never forget. He always waits until the end. Not angry, not bitter, just resigned. Have you ever felt like someone only fights for you after you've already walked out the door? That's what William meant. All the years of subtle emotional distance, all the missed conversations, all the unspoken tension between father and son. Charles was trying now, desperately, too late, to fix it. And that's what hurt William the most. Now let's talk about timing, because royal timing is never random. Charles sent this message before William reached him. That means one thing. Someone in the palace told Charles. Someone warned him. Someone alerted him that William was about to drop a bombshell. And the identity of that person? You'll find that out later. But that betrayal, yes, betrayal, set off a chain reaction that none of them could stop. William finally straightened his posture. Shoulders tense, eyes glossy, voice low but firm. Get my father on the phone. Now. The aide nodded and rushed out again. This call was not going to be normal. This call was not going to be polite. This call was not going to be royal. This was about to be a father and son tearing into a lifetime of unresolved wounds. And then, the phone rang. Not the office line. Not William's personal mobile. The red line. The secure royal family-only channel reserved for emergencies, deaths, and historic moments. The room froze. William's breath caught. He reached for the receiver. Slowly, deliberately. And when he put it to his ear, he didn't say hello. He didn't say father. He didn't say your majesty. He said, I'm sorry you had to hear it this way. And that's when King Charles started to cry. Not a quiet tear. Not a choked breath. Not a single crack in the voice. He wept. Openly. Painfully. Audibly through the line. The King of the United Kingdom. The man who spent his life mastering stoicism and restraint. The monarch who was groomed for 70 years to control his emotions. Broke. Right there on the phone. One staff member who overheard the beginning of the call said it was like hearing a dam burst. Charles choked out. William, please, don't leave me. And that sentence, those 5 words, are the reason palace insiders say that this moment was the closest the monarchy has ever come to a true emotional implosion. Because Charles wasn't pleading as a king. He was pleading as a father terrified of losing the one person who had always held the monarchy together. But William's reply? Painful. Soft. Unflinching. Dad, I can't stay. Silence. Then a sob from Charles so raw it made a senior aide excuse herself from the hallway because she couldn't hold it together. And then, Charles whispered, What about Kate? What about the children? What about everything we built? William closed his eyes and said, That's why I'm doing this. And that one sentence, pure contradiction, pure heartbreak, pure tension, was the moment Charles realized. William wasn't negotiating. William wasn't hesitating. William wasn't bluffing. He was done, completely. And before Charles could even attempt another plea, another voice appeared in the doorway. A voice William wasn't ready to hear yet. A voice that would push this moment over the emotional edge. Because standing there, pale, breathless, wide-eyed, was Kate. And she had heard enough to know her world was about to collapse. What she said next tore through the room like a blade. And that moment, you're not ready for it. Because what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. What if the strongest person in the room isn't the one shouting, crying, or collapsing, but the one who goes completely silent? Because that's exactly what happened when Kate walked in. Not a sound. Not a gasp. Not a whispered, what's going on? Nothing. And that silence, sharp, cold, terrifying, was far louder than any scream could have been. Let's pick up exactly where we left off. William stood in his office, holding the secure line to his father, listening to the king's voice crack and crumble when the door opened. The hinge didn't creak. No one announced her. She didn't rush. She didn't stumble. She just appeared, almost like a ghost. Kate Middleton, still in her morning coat, hair pulled back neatly, face pale, eyes wide with a kind of recognition that only comes from hearing something your heart already feared long before your ears did. She had heard William say the words, "Dad, I can't stay," and that one line was enough. She didn't need to hear the rest of the call. She didn't need to ask questions. She didn't need a briefing. Kate knew precisely what those 5 words meant. This wasn't a disagreement. This wasn't a temporary crisis. This wasn't a rough patch. This was William walking away from the monarchy, which meant walking away from everything their lives had been built upon. And the first thing she did? She froze. Not like someone in shock. Not like someone trying to process bad news. She froze like someone who'd been anticipating this moment for months, maybe years, and had hoped it would never come. A staff member later said the room felt colder the moment Kate stepped inside, as if the temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. Because this wasn't the Princess of Wales walking in. This was the wife, the mother. The woman who had carried the emotional weight of the monarchy alongside William for over a decade, often silently, often invisibly. And she looked hollow, like everything she feared had finally arrived. William turned toward her, the phone still pressed to his ear, Charles still quietly crying on the other end of the line. Kate's eyes flicked to the phone, then to the letter on the desk, then back to William. No anger, no accusation, no panic, just devastation. And then something unexpected happened. Kate lifted a hand, not to touch him, not to comfort him, not to reach for the phone. She put her hand on her own chest, as if steadying herself through a sudden, painful heartbeat. Have you ever had a moment so overwhelming that your body reacts before your mind can even understand what's happening? That was Kate. She inhaled sharply, and the sound, tiny, involuntary, heartbreaking, cut through the room like a blade. William's face changed instantly. The pain he was holding back for his father doubled for her. He lowered the phone slowly, pressing it against his shoulder so Charles couldn't hear the moment about to unfold. "Kate," he whispered, voice breaking in a way even the staff had never heard. Kate didn't answer. Her expression didn't change. She took one step toward him. Not fast, not desperate. A slow, controlled step that made everyone around her brace. And then, she spoke, but not loudly, not angrily, not even emotionally. Her voice was soft, almost steady. "Is it true?" 2 words, 2 syllables. But the weight behind them was unbearable. William's eyes closed for a moment, as if answering her would require all the strength he had left. Charles's muffled voice leaked faintly from the receiver. "William? William, are you still there?" But neither of them answered him. Kate watched William with an expression that wasn't shock, wasn't confusion, wasn't betrayal. It was something worse. Recognition. She didn't ask, why? She didn't ask, how long? She didn't ask, what did they do to you? She didn't ask, what happens to us? Her only question, is it true? Because she already knew. And you could see the exact moment she understood the full scope of what was happening. Her lips tightened, her shoulders dropped by an inch, and her eyes filled with a sheen of tears that refused to fall. Kate Middleton does not cry in front of staff. She does not break in front of witnesses. She does not unravel in public or private. Her strength is her armor. Her composure is her protection. Her silence is her shield. But that silence, that stillness, that was her breaking. William finally answered. Yes. Just one word. Barely audible. Barely formed. And that was the moment, according to multiple palace insiders, when Kate's entire world seemed to tilt. She didn't sway. She didn't gasp. She didn't collapse. She simply blinked. Once. Twice. Slow. Painful. Like each blink was a battle. And for the first time in over a decade, royal staff saw something they swore they would never forget. Kate Middleton's face shattering. Not dramatically. Not wildly. Not with tears streaming down her cheeks. But with micro-expressions, tiny flickers of pain that she tried desperately to contain. Her lip quivered. Her jaw tightened. Her breath caught. It was the quietest breakdown imaginable, and the most devastating. Because Kate wasn't just reacting as a princess. She was reacting as a wife watching the man she loves walk toward a decision that will change their entire lives. And then came the question that sliced through William like a blade. What about the children? Not the monarchy. Not the title. Not the crown. The children, George, Charlotte, Louis, the three people who had the most to lose, and the least choice in the matter. William swallowed hard. His voice cracked. I'm doing this for them. Contradiction, emotion, pain, love, all colliding in one impossible sentence. Kate's breath hitched again. Leaving the monarchy will destroy them, she whispered. No, William replied. Staying will. The silence that followed those 4 words was suffocating, because Kate understood exactly what he meant. The pressure, the scrutiny, the legacy, the trauma, the emotional cost. She remembered what royal life had done to Diana. She remembered what it had done to William. She remembered what it had done to Harry. And she knew, deep inside, that it would eventually come for their children too. Still, she whispered, I'm not ready. And William whispered back, I don't think I ever was. That was the moment the staff looked away. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. This wasn't palace drama. This wasn't royal protocol. This was a marriage cracking under the weight of an institution older than any of them. One footman later said, it felt like watching 2 people grieve something that hadn't died yet. Kate finally took another step closer, her face softening, her voice gentle, her eyes glossy. William, look at me. He did. Are you sure? He nodded. And then something truly heartbreaking happened. Kate turned away. Not far. Just a few inches. She covered her mouth with one hand and let out a single, silent exhale. A silent sob. No tears. No sound. Just the physical tremor of a woman trying desperately not to break. This silent tremor is the moment palace insiders refer to when they say the staff cried. Because seeing Kate, who has endured public bullying, personal attacks, family pressure, and royal expectations with unshakable grace, finally tremble. It was too much. Now here's where the twist comes in. Kate didn't say, don't do this. She didn't say, you can't. She didn't say, you're ruining everything. She said something far more devastating. Then I need to tell them. Them. The children. And William's face collapsed. Because he hadn't reached that part yet. He hadn't figured out how to break the news to George, Charlotte, or Louis. He hadn't planned that conversation. He hadn't prepared for the emotional fallout. Kate walked toward the window, arms crossed tightly over her stomach, like she was trying to hold herself together. What do we say? She whispered. And William said, the truth. She closed her eyes again, steadying herself, before asking, and what truth is that? William's reply was one of the most painful sentences of the entire story. That their father can't survive this. Kate flinched. A visible, physical flinch. Because that was the moment she realized something she had been avoiding for months. She was losing him. Not as a husband. Not as a father. As a man. The man she married was suffocating. And royal life was the thing tightening around his throat. She finally turned back toward him, eyes now shimmering with tears she refused to let fall. If you do this, she said quietly, you have to be absolutely sure. I am, he answered. Then I need to hear it, she whispered. From your own mouth. William hesitated, and Kate took a breath so terrified, so fragile, that everyone within earshot felt it in their own chests. Say it, she said softly. Say what you came here to do. William looked at her, looked at the floor, looked at the letter, looked at the phone still buzzing faintly with Charles's voice. Then he straightened, stood tall, and said this sentence that would change their lives forever. But before he could finish the final word, someone else burst into the room. Someone whose arrival would turn this emotional implosion into a full-scale royal crisis. Someone who was never supposed to hear what came next. Because what happened in that next moment, no one, absolutely no one, saw coming. What if the people who served the crown, those silent shadows in the background, knew the monarchy was about to crack before the royals themselves did? Because that's the hidden truth no one outside the palace ever hears. The staff saw it coming. Not in hindsight. Not through gossip. Not through rumor. They felt it. Deep in the walls. Deep in the routine. Deep in the way the palace heartbeat changed before William, Kate, or even Charles understood what was unfolding. And the moment we left off. When someone burst into the room just as William was about to say the final sentence that would officially shatter royal stability, that interruption wasn't random. It was a staff member, a senior aide, a man who had served the royals for over 20 years. A man known for his composure, his timing, and his absolute control. And the look on his face? Panic. Real panic. The kind you cannot hide, cannot temper, cannot smooth into professionalism. He stumbled into William's office. Breathless, red-faced, clutching a tablet against his chest like a shield. And the moment he crossed the threshold, he froze. Because he saw William. He saw Kate. He saw the letter. He saw the secure phone line blinking red. He saw the emotional wreckage already flooding the room. And he stopped breathing. William turned sharply. Kate straightened but didn't speak. The staffer swallowed hard and whispered, "Sir, you need to see this." 7 words. The exact number William had spoken earlier. 7 words that carried a completely different kind of urgency. William's shoulders stiffened. Kate stepped closer, instinctively protective. The staffer hesitated, glancing at Kate with an expression that suggested whatever he was holding wasn't meant for her eyes. William noticed. His gaze hardened. "Say it," he ordered. The staffer shook his head. I think you should look." William took a step forward, but Kate reached out, just barely, and touched his sleeve. A tiny gesture, a silent plea. Be careful, because the last thing they needed in that moment was another hit, another shock, another emotional blow. But William took the tablet anyway. He tapped the corner, and the screen lit up with something that drained the color from his face almost instantly. Kate leaned in. "What is that?" she whispered. And the staffer replied, voice trembling in a way that made even the air feel heavy. "The story's out, ma'am." Kate's spine straightened. William's jaw clenched. Because there it was. The leak. The thing the palace feared most. The thing they hadn't even had time to fully understand internally was now public. Someone, inside or close enough to the family, had leaked a version of William's decision to the press. Not the full truth. Not the real story. Not the private pain. But enough. Enough to ignite chaos. Enough to stir a frenzy. Enough to turn the palace upside down. The headline was brutal. Short. Explosive. Catastrophic. Prince William prepares to step back from royal duties. Sources claim a final break with the crown. A cold rush hit the room. Silence thickened. Even the hum of the secure phone seemed to dim. Kate's hand slipped from William's arm. William blinked twice, slowly, deliberately, as though his brain needed time to process the words. Kate whispered the question no one wanted to ask. "How long has this been out?" The staffer swallowed. 6 minutes, ma'am. 6 minutes. But 6 minutes in royal time is an eternity. By now, news desks were scrambling. Editors were screaming. Paparazzi were mobilizing. World leaders were being notified. Royal watchers were speculating wildly. And King Charles? He hadn't even finished the call with his son. That moment, right then, was when the staff realized the situation was no longer a family crisis. It was a constitutional crisis, a PR disaster, a historical rupture, a collapsing timeline. Kate took the tablet gently, her fingertips trembling as she scrolled. William watched her face. Her expression changed with every detail she read. Sources say tensions between the king and the Prince of Wales have reached a breaking point. Insiders claim the Princess of Wales has been visibly distressed. Staff described the atmosphere as emotional and fractured. Kate's voice cracked. "They think we're fighting." "We are," William whispered. "No," she said, turning sharply. "We're hurting. That's different." And that distinction, hurt versus conflict, was the reason staff had always admired Kate. Even in crisis, she understood emotional nuance. William inhaled deeply. "Who leaked it?" he asked the aide. The staffer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pressed his lips together, a clear sign he knew something he didn't want to say. William stepped closer, tension rising. "Who?" The aide hesitated. "Finally, someone from the king's team, sir." Kate flinched. William's eyes hardened into something cold and wounded. His father, the one man he had hoped to protect, the one man he didn't want to hurt, now looked complicit, or at least surrounded by people willing to weaponize his pain. "Of course they leaked it," William whispered bitterly. But the aide shook his head quickly. "No, sir. Not the king. Never the king. Someone around him. Someone who overheard. Someone who wanted this out before you controlled the narrative." The betrayal hit hard. Because this meant someone close to Charles, someone present in his emotional breakdown, had taken that vulnerability and turned it into currency. Kate stepped closer to William again, not touching him this time, but hovering, like she needed to be near him, even if she didn't know how to comfort him. William stared at the floor. "You knew," he said softly to the aide. You knew before any of us. The aide's face fell. Yes, sir. And that's when the narrative shifted. Because now we must rewind the story for a moment. Back to before William arrived. Back to the quiet hours before dawn. Back to when the staff woke, dressed, and entered the palace like any other day. There were signs. Little ones, quiet, insignificant, but clear to those who knew what to look for. Sign number 1. William's security team arrived early. Not unusual, unless they arrived without William. Sign number 2. A request was made to prepare the Wales office. Not for meetings, for privacy. Sign number 3. The king's morning brief was abruptly delayed. Extremely rare. Almost unheard of. Sign number 4. 2 private secretaries exchanged a worried look, as they hurried past the staff kitchen. Royal staff are trained not to speculate. But they're also human. They noticed the tension. They noticed the whispers. They noticed the stiffness in posture among senior aides. And then came the final signal. The East Corridor lockdown. A subtle one, barely noticeable, but enough. Doors that were normally open were suddenly closed. Access points that were normally free suddenly required clearance. Staff didn't need the details. They could feel it. Something was happening. Something big. And this is why, when William finally arrived, they didn't greet him with the usual "Good morning, sir." They stood back, held their breath, watched the storm enter the building rather than question it. Which brings us back to the moment unfolding in his office now. The staffer who rushed in had known for at least 10 minutes that the story was about to hit the press. But he didn't interrupt sooner. Because he didn't know if the leak was real. He didn't know if the source was credible. He didn't know if it was rumor or fact. Until the headline went live. And by then, the world already knew something the royals hadn't even finished saying to each other. Kate exhaled shakily. They're painting us as unstable. It's what they do, William muttered. It's what they've always done. Kate stared at him. We're not unstable, she whispered. No, William said, voice cracking. We're exhausted. Those 2 words pierced through her. Because exhausted wasn't anger. Exhausted wasn't betrayal. Exhausted wasn't rebellion. It was vulnerability. Honesty. Truth. Kate looked back at the screen. Everything was happening too fast. Too publicly. Too brutally. We need to tell the king, she said quietly. We will, William replied. And what about the children? We'll protect them, he said. We can't protect them from this, she whispered. William didn't answer. He couldn't. Because she was right. Before either of them could say another word, the aide cleared his throat gently. There's more, sir. William closed his eyes for a moment, bracing himself. What now? The aide hesitated again. It's about your office. Kate's brows tightened. What about it? The aide swallowed. They found something. William stiffened. What did they find? The aide took a shaky breath. A missing page. Kate's eyes widened. A missing page from what? The aide looked at William with a mixture of dread and apology. From the folder you left on your desk this morning, sir. William's face drained of color. Kate's heartbeat visibly quickened. Because a missing page meant only one thing. The most sensitive part of William's decision, the part he hadn't shared with Kate, with Charles, or with anyone, was gone. Taken. Leaked. Weaponized. By who? The aide whispered. Sir, that missing page contains the real reason you're leaving. Kate covered her mouth. William gripped the desk. And the staffer added, voice trembling. And someone took it. Which means, the palace isn't dealing with just a leak. It's dealing with a betrayal. From the inside. And what comes next will tear open a truth no one was prepared to face. What if the most dangerous thing inside a palace isn't a whispered secret, a hidden feud, or a royal scandal, but a single missing sheet of paper? Because that's exactly what happened next. And that missing page, the one quietly lifted from William's private folder, would turn a private family crisis into a full-scale internal investigation, a betrayal, and the first real glimpse into the truth William had been hiding from everyone, including Kate. Let's pick up right where we left off. William stood frozen, one hand on the desk, the other trembling near the folder he had placed so carefully earlier that morning. Kate's breath hitched as she tried to understand what the staffer had just said. A missing page. A page someone stole. From his personal notes. Notes William had written in the middle of the night, under stress so intense he barely realized the ink had smeared in places. The aide swallowed hard. Sir, your office team discovered the folder open. The top sheet was gone. Kate stepped closer. How could that happen? She asked, voice tight, trembling beneath the surface. The aide shook his head helplessly. We don't know, ma'am. Security has been alerted. But the page is missing. Kate's eyes darted from the folder to William. How many people have access to his office? Very few, the aide whispered. Which means whoever took it knew exactly what they were doing. The implication slammed into the room like a second earthquake. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't misplacement. This was targeted, deliberate, calculated, intentional, a betrayal. And betrayal inside the monarchy is more than personal, it's catastrophic. William's throat tightened. Do you know what was written on that page? He asked, his voice a mix of dread and fury. Silence. The aide avoided eye contact. Sir, it appeared to contain your handwritten notes, the ones outlining your motivations. Kate's eyes widened. His reasons? She repeated sharply. The aide nodded. Your real reasons, sir. William's stomach twisted. Because the staffer wasn't talking about the surface-level reasons, stress, pressure, the weight of duty. No, the missing page contained the deeper truth. The truth William hadn't shared with anyone. The truth he wasn't ready to voice yet. And now, someone else had it. Someone in the palace. Someone who could weaponize it. Kate placed a hand on her forehead, trying to steady the swirl of fear and anger rising inside her. Who saw you take the folder this morning? She asked William. Everyone in the corridor, he replied. And who knew you'd written something last night? No one, he said. But Kate shook her head. Someone knew. Someone was watching. And that's when the contradictions and the emotional complexity of this moment hit their peak. Because the future king, a man raised in the most secure environment imaginable, a man surrounded by protocol, protection, and loyalty, was being watched by someone close, someone embedded, someone trusted. Someone who not only saw the folder, but knew which page mattered most. William's anger flared, quiet, controlled, but unmistakable. Who took it? He demanded again. The aide swallowed. We're reviewing cameras, sir. But the corridor 3 feed was offline for 20 minutes. Kate's head snapped up. Offline? How? We don't know yet. And that detail? That was the most terrifying part of all. Because palace security is not sloppy. Camera outages are rare. Unexplained outages are nearly impossible. Timed outages, targeted to coincide with William's early arrival, are unheard of. Kate's voice dropped to a whisper. They planned this. William didn't answer. He didn't need to, because the truth was already pulsing through the room with suffocating clarity. Someone inside the palace wanted that page. Someone knew William was breaking. Someone knew he was leaving. Someone wanted to control the narrative. Someone moved before he did. And the leak they had just seen online might not have been the first leak. It might have been the second. Kate stepped closer to the desk, staring at the folder like it was a crime scene. What else was in there? She asked. William exhaled shakily. Drafts. Notes. Questions. List. Kate asked. He nodded. Of what I was willing to give up. Kate's stomach dropped. And the missing page? She pressed. William looked away, pain flickering across his face. It had the list of reasons. The ones I haven't shared. Kate flinched. Because this wasn't just about the monarchy anymore. This was personal, private, intimate. A window into William's mind. A window someone illegally stole. The aide spoke again, voice tight. Sir, the office team said it looks like the page was removed cleanly. No tearing. No disturbance to the stack. Whoever did this had access, and time. Time, Kate repeated. The word felt poisoned. Because time inside a palace is tightly controlled, monitored, structured, predictable. For someone to have time meant someone had clearance. A senior aide, a private secretary, a high-level staffer, someone William saw daily, someone Kate trusted, someone who smiled at them, served them, bowed to them, while planning to take the one piece of paper that held William's innermost truth. William finally opened the folder. Every staff member in the room instinctively leaned forward. And there it was. Notes scribbled in dark ink. Crossed out lines. Rewritten sentences. Paragraphs that looked like pain spilled onto paper. Kate scanned the top pages. The role is consuming me. My identity is gone. I'm failing at everything. I can't breathe in this life. Her voice trembled. William closed his eyes. I didn't want you to see those yet. Kate didn't respond. She was too busy holding back the tears threatening to spill. Not because she was angry, but because seeing William's private agony, written by his own hand, in the middle of the night, alone, devastated her. "Why didn't you come to me?" she whispered. William opened his eyes. "I didn't want to put this on you." She shook her head. "You already did," she whispered. "You just didn't tell me." Pain. Contradictions. Love tangled with hurt. Two people who adore each other, crumbling under the weight of a crown neither of them fully chose. But the emotional firestorm wasn't done yet. Because the aide interrupted again, softly, apologetically. "There's something else, sir." William stiffened. "What now?" The aide took a deep breath, as if bracing himself. "The missing page wasn't just about your reasons." Kate frowned. "What else was on it?" The aide looked at William. It was clear he didn't want to be the one to say this. It included a name. Kate's heart stopped. "Whose name?" The aide hesitated. "Sir, should I say it?" William nodded slowly. "Yes." The aide exhaled. "It had the name of the person you believe pushed you to make this decision." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Endless. Kate's face drained of color. "There's someone responsible?" she whispered. William didn't speak, but the aide did. "Sir, whoever took that page now knows the name." Kate's knees weakened. William closed his eyes again, pain erupting across his face. Because now the truth was undeniable. Someone inside the palace stole the page containing the identity of the person William blamed for pushing him out of the monarchy. Someone now had ammunition, leverage, power. And Kate? She wasn't ready to hear that name. But she was about to. Because the aide cleared his throat again, shakily, nervously. "Sir, we believe the person who took the page," he swallowed, "is also the person whose name was written on it." Kate's breath caught. William's grip tightened. And what happens next reveals the identity of the person William believes drove him to walk away. And the betrayal is deeper than anyone imagined. What if the person who finally pushed William to walk away from the monarchy wasn't an enemy, but someone he once trusted? Because the betrayal didn't come from outside the palace walls. It came from within them. And the moment we left off, when the aide revealed that the missing page likely contained the name of the very person who stole it, was the moment everything inside that room shifted. Let's pick up exactly there. The aide stood frozen. Kate stood pale. William's breathing tightened. The silence became thick, heavy, almost electric. Someone inside the palace had taken the page. Someone whose name William had written as the cause of his breaking point. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Kate's voice finally broke the silence. "Who is it?" she whispered. No anger. No sharpness. Just dread. The dread of a woman who knows that the moment she hears the name, nothing in her life will ever be the same again. William didn't answer. Not immediately. His jaw clenched. His eyes lowered. His hand gripped the edge of the desk. Because saying the name out loud would make the truth real. And William wasn't ready for that. The aide swallowed hard. "Sir, we need to confirm it before." "Say it," William interrupted softly. The aide hesitated. But then, he said the name. And Kate nearly collapsed. Because it wasn't a staff member. It wasn't a rival. It wasn't a distant cousin. It wasn't a political contact or a disgruntled advisor. It was someone far more devastating. "Sir," the aide whispered, "we believe the missing page was taken by your brother, Harry." The room froze. Kate's hand flew to her mouth. William's eyes shut tightly, grief crashing through him like a wave. Even the aide seemed terrified to breathe. Harry, the brother who left. The brother who blamed the institution. The brother who said he wanted nothing to do with royal life. The brother who lives oceans away, yet still somehow found a way to reach into the heart of the palace and rip out the most private truth William had ever written. Kate whispered, barely audible. "Harry?" Harry took it. But the aide shook his head. "Not physically, ma'am. He wasn't in the palace. But one of his contacts, someone who came in under the radar, someone who had access to Corridor 3 this morning." Kate's voice trembled. "A spy." "Not officially," the aide said, "but someone sympathetic to him. Someone who believed he had a right to know what William planned." William didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe, because this was the deepest cut imaginable. Harry wasn't just watching. Harry wasn't just listening. Harry wasn't just guessing. Harry had someone inside. Someone feeding him information. Someone close enough to reach William's private office. Someone loyal to him, not the monarchy. Kate's voice cracked. But why would Harry want that page? The aide didn't answer. William did. Softly, painfully, with a voice that sounded like it was being dragged across broken glass. Because he wanted to see if I blamed him. Silence. Kate stared at him, eyes wide, shimmering, devastated. You wrote Harry's name, she whispered. William nodded slowly. Kate stepped back as if she'd been struck. Oh my God. Because the real catalyst, the real breaking point, wasn't Charles. It wasn't the institution. It wasn't duty. It wasn't the weight of the crown. It was Harry. Harry was the missing page. Harry was the reason. Harry was the catalyst. Not out of malice. Not out of revenge. Not out of rivalry. But because William had reached a place of grief so deep, so suffocating, that he finally admitted the truth. He couldn't live inside the institution that destroyed his brother, only to watch it begin destroying him too. Let's step into that emotional truth for a moment. William and Harry were once inseparable, two halves of the same childhood trauma. Two boys who clung to each other after losing Diana. Two young men who leaned on each other through their father's controversies, the press, the family fractures. But over time, they drifted. They broke. They fought. They became strangers. And William, through all of it, was left carrying the guilt. Guilt that he stayed. Guilt that he complied. Guilt that he played the role expected of him. Guilt that he didn't run when Harry did. And in the darkest hours of many nights, he wondered, was Harry right? Did William sacrifice himself the same way Harry refused to? Now imagine writing those feelings down. Imagine admitting that the tension with your brother, the heartbreak, the loss, the distance, was part of the reason you were